In 1859, the sun fired a warning shot at Earth. It came in the form of a solar storm, so powerful it lit up the skies around the world, shocked telegraph operators, and set parts of the 19th century's cutting-edge technology on fire. The event was so surreal that people thought the world was ending. But what if I told you that if it happened today, with our satellites, our internet, our planes, and our power grids, the devastation would be beyond imagination? This is the story of the Carrington Event, the day the world went silent, and the nightmare of what would happen if history repeated itself. The mid-19th century was a time of transformation. The Industrial Revolution had reshaped Europe and North America. Steam engines powered railroads and ships. Telegraph wires crisscrossed continents, carrying messages faster than ever before. For the first time in human history, information could travel faster than a horse could ride. But it was still a world that looked up at the stars with more wonder than understanding. Astronomers studied sunspots with primitive telescopes. Nobody fully understood that our star was not just a glowing orb in the sky, but a roiling sphere of nuclear fire capable of unleashing storms across the cosmos. Enter Richard Carrington, a 33-year-old British astronomer. On the morning of September 1st, 1859, Carrington was at his private observatory in Surrey. He carefully sketched the dark blotches of a massive sunspot group, larger than the Earth itself, crawling across the sun's surface. He had no idea he was about to witness the most important 60 seconds of his life. As Carrington watched through his telescope, something unprecedented happened. A blinding flash of white light burst from the sunspot cluster, so sudden and so brilliant that Carrington dropped his pen in shock. He later described it as two patches of intensely bright and dazzling light, brighter than anything he had ever seen on the sun. At that exact moment, another astronomer, Richard Hodgson, observed the same phenomenon from a separate observatory miles away. Two witnesses, one extraordinary event, the first recorded observation of a solar flare. What Carrington had witnessed was a coronal mass ejection, a colossal blast of plasma and magnetic fields, hurled into space at millions of kilometers per hour. Within 18 hours, it would slam into Earth, and when it hit, the world lit up. Auroras, normally seen only in polar regions, spilled across the entire globe. From the Caribbean to the Mediterranean, from Rome to Havana, skies burned with sheets of red, green, and purple light. In the Rocky Mountains, miners were so convinced it was dawn that they got up and began making breakfast in the middle of the night. In Washington, D.C., newspapers reported crowds gathered in the streets, staring upward at the heavens, convinced the strange lights were a divine sign. But the auroras were only the beginning. Earth's magnetic field convulsed violently under the storm. Telegraph lines, the arteries of 19th century communication, went haywire. Sparks leaped from the machines, shocking operators. Papers caught fire. In some places, telegraph systems continued working, even when their batteries were disconnected, powered solely by the storm surging through the wires. Across Europe and North America, the backbone of modern communication was thrown into chaos. It was the Victorian internet blackout. Today, we know exactly what Carrington witnessed. A solar flare is an intense burst of radiation, often accompanied by a coronal mass ejection, or CME, a bubble of charged particles hurled from the sun's atmosphere. When a CME collides with Earth, it interacts with our planet's magnetic field, creating geomagnetic storms. Most solar storms are harmless, but the Carrington event was not most storms. It was a perfect storm, a direct hit, moving unusually fast, carrying immense magnetic energy. Scientists now estimate its intensity at -850 nanoteslas on the Disturbance Storm Time Index, far beyond anything recorded since. It wasn't the only storm of its kind. In 1921, another powerful geomagnetic storm, sometimes called the New York Railroad Storm, set fire to telegraph offices and melted telegraph wires. In 1989, a more modest storm plunged the entire Canadian province of Quebec into a blackout for 9 hours, knocking out power for millions. But none of these came close to the scale of the Carrington event. Scientists agree it remains the most powerful solar storm in recorded history, and it serves as a terrifying benchmark for what the sun is capable of. So here's the question: what if the Carrington event happened today? Our world is infinitely more vulnerable than in 1859. Back then, the telegraph was the only technology disrupted. Today, Every aspect of our lives, communications, transportation, healthcare, finance, even the water we drink, depends on fragile systems linked by satellites and power grids. A Carrington-level CME would begin by frying satellites in orbit. GPS, weather satellites, communications, relays, all crippled. Planes would lose navigation. Shipping lanes would be blind. Smartphones would lose their maps overnight. Then, the power grids. The storm's induced currents would overload transformers, the giant machines that step power up and down. These aren't easily replaced. Some take months or years to manufacture. Entire nations could be plunged into darkness for weeks, even months. Without power, there's no internet, no refrigeration, no water pumping stations. Hospitals switch to generators until the fuel runs out. Planes are grounded. A team stop working. The stock market frozen. Supply chains collapse. And here's the kicker. We nearly saw this happen in 2012. A solar storm rivaling the Carrington Event narrowly missed Earth by just 9 days. NASA scientists later admitted that if it had struck, modern civilization would have been knocked back decades. We prepare for pandemics, cyber attacks, even asteroids, but space weather, it barely registers on most government risk assessments. Yet experts warn a Carrington-level storm is inevitable. It's not a question of if, but when. Imagine it. The auroras dance across the sky, even in cities like Los Angeles or Cairo. People rush outside, awestruck. Then, suddenly, phones stop working, planes lose contact with towers, lights flicker, then die. Day 1. Blackouts across continents, no internet. Emergency services overwhelmed. Day 3. Supermarkets stripped bare. Gas pumps offline. Week 2. Hospitals ration fuel. Refrigerated medicines spoil. Month 1. Food distribution collapses. Banking systems paralyzed. Billions in economic losses. Social unrest grows. The modern world depends on invisible threads of electricity and data. The Carrington Event would snap those threads in an instant, and with them, the illusion of stability we take for granted. So what can we do? Scientists and governments aren't blind to the danger. NASA and NOAA operate solar observatories, like the Solar Dynamics Observatory and the Discover satellite, constantly watching the sun for signs of eruptions. In the best case, we might get 12 to 24 hours warning before a Cami hits Earth, but knowing is only half the battle. Protecting power grids requires investment in hardening transformers, building redundancies, and planning black start scenarios, restarting the grid from total collapse. Right now, many countries are dangerously underprepared. On the individual level, resilience means backup power, emergency food, water filtration, and communication devices that don't rely on the grid. It sounds extreme, until you realize that one solar storm could erase everything we rely on in a single night. The Carrington Event was a warning, one written in fire across the sky 160 years ago. In 1859, it disrupted a world just beginning to wire itself together. In the 21st century, it would tear the wires out entirely. The sun gave us life. It could also, in an instant, take away the fragile web of technology our lives depend on. The only question is, when it happens again, will we be ready? Thanks for watching. Drop a comment. How long could you last without power or internet? And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden dangers and forgotten moments of history.